Chapter 1. There is a secret that ancient humanity knew and that modern civilization has almost completely forgotten. Numbers are not human inventions. They are not mere abstract symbols we create to count and measure. They are living entities, vibratory beings that existed before there were human minds to conceive them. Each number possesses a voice, a specific frequency, a secret sound that resonates through all planes of existence. And when we learn to listen to these sounds, when we tune into the numerical frequencies that sustain reality, we access a power of transformation and healing that transcends everything conventional medicine has imagined. This is not a poetic metaphor or a philosophical speculation. For the mystery schools of antiquity, particularly the Pythagorean tradition, it was direct knowledge, verified through experience and rigorous experimentation. Initiates in these mysteries did not study mathematics as an abstract discipline separate from life. They studied numbers as living forces, as the organizing principles of the cosmos, as frequencies that could be heard, felt, experienced directly in altered states of consciousness. When a Pythagorean adept contemplated the number 3, they did not simply see a symbol on a page or an abstract mental concept. They perceived a specific frequency, a quality of vibration that manifested in countless forms throughout the universe, in the triadic structure of creation, birth, life, and death, in the 3 dimensions of space, in the Trinity present in practically all spiritual traditions. 3 was not an idea about these things. It was the vibratory essence that unified them, the fundamental pattern expressed in all of them. This understanding of numbers as living vibratory entities was not exclusive to Greece. In ancient Egypt, temple priests used what they called the science of sacred numbers, esoteric knowledge about how certain numerical proportions could be incorporated into architecture to create spaces that facilitated altered states of consciousness and healing. The dimensions of the Great Pyramid were not chosen arbitrarily. They were calculated with extraordinary precision to incorporate multiple sacred proportions. Pi, Phi, relationships that expressed deep knowledge about the nature of reality. In India, the Vedic tradition developed a complete system of sacred numerology where each number from 1 to 9 was associated with a planet, a deity, a color, a seed sound or bija mantra, and multiple spiritual qualities. The Vedic sages understood that pronouncing certain numbers in specific sequences with the correct intonation produced measurable effects on consciousness and the body. They were not counting, they were invoking, they were calling specific cosmic forces through their numerical codes. In the Hebrew Kabbalah, every letter of the Hebrew alphabet has a numerical value, and this correspondence is not conventional, but essential. The letter Aleph, which equals 1, does not represent the number 1. It is the number 1 in letter form. It is the frequency of unity manifesting as a written symbol. The entire practice of gematria, where words with the same numerical value are considered mystically related, is based on this understanding that numbers are the fundamental vibratory structures of reality, and words are expressions of these structures. Sa, chapter 2. In the 6th century before the Common Era, on the island of Samos in the Aegean Sea, a man was born who would forever change the human understanding of numbers. Pythagoras was not merely a brilliant mathematician, as he is presented in modern textbooks that reduce his legacy to a theorem about triangles. He was a mystic initiated in multiple esoteric traditions, a visionary who traveled for decades through Egypt, Babylon, Persia, and possibly India, absorbing the secret teachings of each culture. And what he discovered on these journeys transformed his understanding of reality itself. The story goes that the definitive revelation came when Pythagoras was passing by a blacksmith shop and heard the sound of hammers striking the anvil. He noticed that some hammers produced sounds that harmonized beautifully with each other, while others created unpleasant dissonances. Intrigued, he investigated and discovered that the hammers that produced harmony had weights that maintained simple mathematical proportions with each other: 2 to 1, 3 to 2, 4 to 3. This discovery led him to experiment with taut strings. He found that if he divided a string exactly in half and made it vibrate, it produced a note exactly 1 octave higher than the full string. If he divided it in a proportion of 2/3, it produced a perfect musical fifth. If he divided it in a proportion of 3/4, it produced a perfect fourth. The simplest mathematical proportions produced the most consonant, most harmonious, most pleasant musical intervals. But Pythagoras saw beyond the immediate physical phenomenon. He had an intuition that would change the course of Western philosophy, science, and spirituality. If musical beauty, something we experience as an aesthetic and emotional quality, is determined by exact mathematical proportions, then perhaps all beauty, all order, all harmony in the universe is fundamentally based on numerical relationships. Perhaps numbers are not tools we use to describe reality, but they are reality itself at its most fundamental level. This revelation led him to found a school that was simultaneously a spiritual community, a scientific research center, and a mystery order. The Pythagorean school in Crotona was not an academic institution in the modern sense. It was a temple dedicated to the study of numbers as a path to spiritual enlightenment. Students who entered went through years of preparatory training before being admitted to the inner teachings. They practiced dietary purification, fasting, prolonged periods of silence, intensive meditation. All of this was not asceticism for its own sake, but preparation to develop the ability to perceive directly the realities that numbers represented. The final initiation into the Pythagorean mysteries involved what the texts call listening to the music of the spheres. It was not a metaphor. The initiates, through specific practices of deep meditation, developed the ability to directly perceive the vibratory frequencies that sustain reality. They reported hearing tones, chords, harmonies that did not come from any external physical source, but emanated from the cosmos itself, from the vibratory structure of space, time, and matter. Pythagoras taught that the numbers from 1 to 10 contain all the possibilities of existence. These numbers are not arbitrary quantities, but archetypes, fundamental principles that are expressed at all levels of reality. 1 is unity, the principle of the indivisible, the source from which everything emerges. 2 is duality, the first division, the principle of polarity that allows manifestation. 3 is synthesis, the resolution of duality into creative trinity. And so on, each number expressing a unique principle, a specific quality of being. Chapter 3. But something happened in the development of Western civilization that caused this deep understanding of numbers to be almost completely lost. The transition began with the rise of abstract rational thought in classical Greece. Plato, though deeply influenced by Pythagoreanism, began to emphasize numbers as eternal ideas in a separate realm of perfect forms, separating them from their directly perceptible vibratory nature. Aristotle took this process further, criticizing Pythagorean mysticism and establishing a more rigid division between abstract mathematics and physical reality. For Aristotle, numbers were useful for describing and measuring nature, but they were not nature itself. This more pragmatic and less mystical perspective gradually became dominant. With the rise of Christianity and the fall of the classical world, much of the esoteric Pythagorean knowledge was lost or suppressed. The medieval church viewed with suspicion teachings that suggested divinity could be understood through numbers and mathematical proportions rather than through biblical revelation. The mystery schools were closed. Their texts were destroyed or hidden. Initiates were persecuted. What survived of Pythagoreanism did so in veiled forms, preserved by secret societies, by alchemists who hid mathematical knowledge in chemical symbolism, by cathedral builders who incorporated sacred proportions into architecture without publicly explaining their meaning, by Kabbalists who continued to work with numerical correspondences in apparently religious contexts. During the Renaissance, there was a resurgence of interest in Pythagoreanism, particularly in Italy, where figures like Marsilio Ficino and Pico della Mirandola. Mirandola attempted to reconcile Platonism, Hermeticism, and Christianity. But by then, the understanding of numbers as living vibratory entities had already fragmented. What remained were fragments. Astrological numerology here, architectural proportions there, occult symbolism in esoteric texts. But the living synthesis was lost. The final blow came with the scientific revolution of the 17th and 18th centuries. Descartes, Newton, and their successors developed a vision of the universe as a mathematical machine. Yes, but a dead machine, governed by laws expressed in equations, but lacking the living, conscious, vibrating dimension that the Pythagoreans had known. Mathematics became a purely instrumental tool, useful for calculating, predicting, controlling nature, but separated from any spiritual or transformative dimension. In the modern world, most people learn mathematics as a set of abstract rules for manipulating symbols without inherent meaning. Numbers are treated as useful conventions, nothing more. The idea that the number 3 possesses an intrinsic quality, a specific frequency, an essential character that can be experienced directly would seem absurd to a modern mathematician trained in the materialistic tradition. And yet, the knowledge was never completely lost. It persisted in underground currents of culture, in esoteric traditions, in the practices of healers and mystics who continued to work with numbers as living forces. And in the 20th century, curiously, some scientists and inventors on the frontiers of physics began to rediscover truths that the Pythagoreans had known 2,500 years ago. Chapter 4. The Pythagorean masters had deep reasons for keeping their profound knowledge veiled. It was not elitism or a desire to monopolize power. It was practical wisdom based on an understanding of human nature and how transformative knowledge works. They understood that the knowledge of how numbers act as vibratory forces, as codes that can influence reality, could be misused. A person whose consciousness has not been purified, whose ego remains dominant, whose motives are selfish, might try to use this knowledge for manipulation, control, or personal gain at the expense of others. The result would be not only ineffective, but actively harmful both to the one attempting it and to others. For this reason, the knowledge was transmitted only after years of preparation. The aspirant had to demonstrate not only intellectual capacity, but purity of character, sincerity of motives, and above all, the ability to directly experience the realities that the mathematical symbols represented. It was not enough to conceptually understand that the number 3 represents the principle of triadic creation. It was necessary to have directly experienced, in states of deep meditation, the vibratory frequency of 3, to have felt how it resonates in one's own consciousness. The preservation in symbols and ceremonies served multiple purposes. The symbols acted as maps that could guide the prepared initiate toward direct experiences, while remaining opaque to those who only looked at them superficially. The ceremonies, with their specific numerical repetitions, their carefully calculated proportions of time and space, their precise rhythms, were technologies of consciousness transformation. They were not symbolic theater, but practical applications of the knowledge of how numerical proportions affect states of consciousness. For example, a ritual might involve circumambulating an altar 7 times, stopping at 4 cardinal directions, pronouncing a sacred name 3 times in each direction. To the external observer, this seems like an arbitrary religious ceremony. To the initiate, every number, every proportion, every repetition is calibrated to produce a specific effect on the participant's energetic field, using principles of vibratory resonance that the Pythagoreans had meticulously studied. The esoteric texts were written in veiled language for a similar reason. A text might describe the marriage of the king and the queen when it was actually instructing on the unification of polarized principles expressed numerically. Only those who had received the interpretative keys could decode the text and apply the practical knowledge it contained. Chapter 5. The central teaching of Pythagoreanism is summarized in the phrase, All things are ordered according to number. This does not mean that everything can be numerically measured, although that is true. It means something deeper, that numbers are the primary organizing principles of the universe, the invisible structures upon which all manifestation is built. Imagine the universe not as a collection of material objects in empty space, but as an infinite vibratory field where different frequencies of vibration create the illusion of separate objects. This is not mystical speculation. It is close to how quantum physics describes reality. In this vibratory field, numbers represent fundamental frequencies, basic harmonics, of which all other vibrations are combinations. The number 1 is the fundamental frequency, the base tone of the universe, what in physics would be called the minimum energy state of the quantum field. What in mysticism is called the One, God, the Source. It is not a numerical one that we can count, but the principle of unity itself, the vibration of the indivisible totality. The number 2 emerges when the One perceives itself, creating the duality of observer and observed. It is the vibration of polarity, positive-negative, masculine-feminine, wave-particle. All manifestation requires this primary duality. Without it, there would only be the motionless one, without change, without creation. The number 3 is the first creative synthesis. When two polarized principles interact, they generate a third. Father and mother generate child. Thesis and antithesis generate synthesis. Wave and particle generate quantum field. 3 is the vibration of creativity, of generation, of the dynamic resolution of polarities into new forms. Each subsequent number expresses a unique principle, a frequency that produces specific patterns of organization. 4 is the vibration of stability, of material structure, represented geometrically by the square and the cube. 5 is the vibration of life, of the organic, present in the pentagonal symmetry of many living forms. 6 is the vibration of balance and beauty, expressed in the hexagonal structure of crystals and beehives. 7 is the vibration of the sacred, of complete cycles, present in the 7 days of the week, the 7 musical notes, the 7 chakras. 8 is the vibration of infinity and regeneration, of the cycle that renews itself. 9 is the vibration of completeness, of the end of a cycle before the return to the One. Chapter 6. The most sacred symbol of the Pythagorean school was the tetractys, a triangle formed by 10 dots arranged in 4 rows. 1 dot in the top row, 2 dots in the second row, 3 dots in the third row, and 4 dots in the bottom row, dots in the second row, 3 in the third, and 4 in the fourth. The sum is 10. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 10. This simple geometric symbol contained, according to the Pythagoreans, all the wisdom about how the universe manifests from the one toward multiplicity. The single dot at the top represents the primordial one, the source, the indivisible unity. The second row with 2 dots represents the first division, the creation of duality. The third row with 3 dots represents the creative synthesis, the generating principle. The fourth row with 4 dots represents material manifestation, the physical world stabilized in form. The Pythagoreans swore their most sacred vows on the tetractys. They considered it not only a symbolic diagram, but a precise map of how creation unfolds. And more profoundly, they believed that by meditating on the tetractys, contemplating it with total concentration, one could directly experience the process of manifestation. One could feel how the one divides into 2, how the 2 generates the 3, how the 3 crystallizes into 4, and how the 4 potentially contains all the numbers up to 10. 10 itself was considered the number of perfection, of return to unity at a higher level. 10 contains the 1, but now enriched by the journey through all the numbers. It is like the octave in music. We start at C, travel through D, E, F, G, A, B, and arrive at C again, but 1 octave higher, the same note, but at a duplicated frequency. Numbers beyond 10 were considered combinations and repetitions of the fundamental principles from 1 to 10. 11 is 1 plus 10, a new cycle beginning. 12 is twice 6, or 3 times 4, incorporating the sacred proportions of these numbers. And so on. Everything eventually reduced to the root numbers from 1 to 9, with 10 as the synthesis and 0 as the potential void from which everything emerges. Chapter 7. Pythagoras' discovery about the mathematical proportions in music was revolutionary because it demonstrated empirically, measurably, that there was a direct connection between abstract numbers and concrete aesthetic and emotional experience. The beauty of a musical chord was not a matter of arbitrary subjective taste. It was determined by objective mathematical relationships. When two strings vibrate with frequencies in a 2-to-1 proportion, they produce an octave, the musical interval that sounds like the same note but higher. This is neither cultural coincidence nor learned convention. It is a fundamental physical property of sound. The second string vibrates exactly twice for every vibration of the first. This duplication of frequency produces a sensation of harmonic identity that every human auditory system recognizes instinctively. The 3-to-2 proportion produces a musical fifth, the interval that, after the octave, sounds the most consonant, the most harmonious. The 4-to-3 proportion produces a musical fourth. These proportions, 2-to-1, 3-to-2, 4-to-3, are the simplest possible after 1-to-1, and they produce the musical intervals that form the basis of practically all musical systems in all human cultures. Pythagoras realized that this revealed something profound. If simple mathematical proportions produce experiences of beauty and harmony, then perhaps all beauty, all harmony in the universe is based on mathematical proportions. The orbits of the planets, the cycles of the seasons, the proportions of the human body, the growth patterns of plants, everything we experience as harmonious, beautiful, ordered, must be expressing fundamental numerical proportions. This intuition led him to the doctrine of the music of the spheres, the idea that the entire universe is a mathematical symphony, that everything vibrates according to numbers, that reality is fundamentally a cosmic musical chord. It was not a metaphor. For Pythagoras, the universe literally sings, emits sounds, produces music through the mathematical proportions expressed at all levels of its structure. Chapter 8. What Pythagoras had discovered completely transformed the relationship between mathematics and reality. Before him, mathematics was primarily a practical tool for commerce, for architecture, for basic astronomy. It was useful, but not sacred. Pythagoras revealed that mathematics is the language in which the universe is written, the grammar of creation, the source code of reality. If sound, something we experience directly with our senses, our emotions, our bodies, is governed by exact mathematical proportions, then mathematics is not a cold dyad abstraction. It is alive. It vibrates. It resonates. It produces real effects on matter and on consciousness. And if this is true for sound, it must be true for everything else. Light, color, form, movement, life itself. This revelation opened up extraordinary possibilities. If we understand the mathematical proportions that govern health, we could restore sick bodies to harmony. If we understand the numbers that govern consciousness, we could elevate mental states from chaos to clarity. If we understand the numerical codes of the cosmos, we could consciously align ourselves with the universal order, living in harmony instead of in friction with the fundamental laws of existence. The Pythagoreans dedicated their lives to exploring these possibilities. They developed complex systems of correspondences between numbers, musical sounds, geometric forms, colors, planets, moral virtues, and states of consciousness. Everything was interconnected through mathematical proportions. Everything was part of a single cosmic symphony where every element resonated with all the others according to precise laws of numerical harmony. Chapter 9. The doctrine of the music of the spheres maintained that the celestial bodies, in their movement through space, produce sounds. Each planet, moving in its specific orbit at a specific velocity, generates a musical note. The faster speed of Mercury produces a higher note. The slower speed of Saturn produces a lower note. And all these notes together form a cosmic chord, a celestial symphony that sounds constantly. For the Pythagoreans, this was not poetic fantasy. It was a literal description of reality. They believed that in altered states of consciousness, particularly in deep meditation, it was actually possible to hear this celestial music. Texts speak of initiates who, after years of preparation and practice, reported directly perceiving harmonic tones that emanated from the cosmos, music that did not come from any identifiable physical source, but was as real as any audible sound. The reason why we do not ordinarily hear this cosmic music, they taught, is that we have been immersed in it since birth. It is like the fish that does not perceive the water because it has never experienced anything different. The music of the spheres is the constant background sound of existence, so omnipresent that it becomes inaudible to ordinary consciousness. Only when the mind stills deeply, when we cease to identify with the internal noise of compulsive thoughts, can we begin to perceive the fundamental sound of the universe. The Pythagoreans also taught that the proportions between planetary distances reflected the same proportions that produce musical harmony. Although their astronomical measurements were primitive compared to modern knowledge, their fundamental intuition that there is mathematical order in the cosmos, that planetary orbits express harmonic proportions, turns out to be surprisingly close to the truth. Chapter 10. Almost 2,000 years after Pythagoras, a German astronomer named Johannes Kepler would scientifically rediscover and validate fundamental aspects of the Pythagorean vision. Kepler, deeply influenced by Platonism and Pythagoreanism, dedicated his life to discovering the mathematical order underlying the solar system. In his masterpiece, Harmonices Mundi, The Harmony of the World, published in 1619, Kepler demonstrated that planetary orbits are not perfect circles as had been believed, but elliptical. And more extraordinarily, he demonstrated that the velocities of the planets at different points in their orbits maintain precise mathematical relationships with each other. Kepler calculated the angular velocities of each planet at its perihelion, the point closest to the Sun, and its aphelion, the point farthest away. He then compared these velocities between different planets and discovered something astonishing. The proportions between these velocities corresponded to harmonic musical intervals. Mercury and Venus formed a proportion close to a musical fifth. Mars and Jupiter formed another harmonic proportion. The entire solar system could be represented as a musical composition where each planet played its specific part. Kepler literally wrote musical scores based on planetary velocities, translating the mathematical proportions of the orbits into musical notes. He was not being metaphorical. He genuinely believed he had discovered the music that God composed when creating the universe, the mathematical symphony that the Pythagoreans had intuited 2 millennia earlier. Although some specific aspects of Kepler's calculations have been refined by modern astronomy, his fundamental intuition remains valid. There is extraordinary mathematical order in the solar system. Planetary orbits express proportions that have aesthetic qualities similar to harmonic music, and the universe is organized according to principles that transcend the merely mechanical and point towards something we might call mathematical beauty, cosmic harmony, or as the Pythagoreans called it, the music of the spheres. Chapter 11. The Pythagorean doctrine held that the human being is a microcosm, a universe in miniature that reflects the structure of the macrocosm. This idea was not unique to Pythagoras. It appears in multiple ancient traditions, but the Pythagoreans developed it in specifically mathematical and musical terms. If the cosmos is a symphony, the human being is an instrument in that symphony. Our bodies are built according to the same mathematical proportions that govern planetary orbits, the growth of plants, the structure of crystals. The proportion between different body parts, the frequency of our biological rhythms, the structure of our DNA. All express sacred numbers, harmonic proportions. When we are in health, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, our entire being vibrates in harmony with the cosmic symphony. We are tuned, like a well-calibrated musical instrument. Our internal rhythms, the heartbeat, the respiratory cycle, brain waves, hormonal cycles, all these rhythms are in harmonic proportions with each other and with the larger rhythms of the cosmos, day and night, lunar phases, the seasons. When we fall into illness, whether physical or psychological, it is because we have lost this tuning. Our internal rhythms have become desynchronized. We are vibrating in dissonance with ourselves and with the cosmic order. One organ is vibrating at the wrong frequency. One system is operating in a discordant proportion with other systems. We are like an out-of-tune instrument producing false notes in the universal symphony. Healing, from this Pythagorean perspective, consists of retuning, of restoring the correct harmonic proportions. And this can be achieved through sound, music, rhythm, consciously applied according to knowledge of the mathematical proportions that govern health. It can also be achieved through contemplation of sacred numbers, meditation on geometric proportions, and conscious alignment with cosmic rhythms. The Pythagoreans practiced what they called purification through music. They used specific musical modes, built on precise mathematical proportions, to affect emotional and physical states. One mode to calm anger, another to lift melancholy, another to induce deep concentration, another to facilitate restorative sleep. It was not entertainment, it was vibrational medicine based on a mathematical understanding of how sound affects consciousness and the body. Chapter 12. In the 20th century, a scientific genius named Nikola Tesla, an inventor whose work gave rise to modern electrical technology, made a statement that baffled many and fascinated others. If you only knew the magnificence of the 3, the 6, and the 9, then you would have a key to the universe. This seemingly cryptic phrase connects directly to the Pythagorean wisdom about numbers as fundamental frequencies of power. Tesla was not a mystic in the conventional sense. He was a rigorous scientist, a brilliant mathematician, a meticulous experimenter. But unlike many scientists of his era, he never lost his sense of wonder at the mysteries of the universe. And in his investigations into electricity, magnetism, resonance, and vibration, he discovered numerical patterns that led him to surprisingly similar conclusions to those of the ancient Pythagoreans. Tesla was obsessed with certain numbers. He insisted that his hotel room numbers be divisible by 3. He would walk around a building 3 times before entering. He used 18 napkins to clean his tableware during meals, 6 for each piece. For many, these behaviors seemed like mere eccentricities or symptoms of obsessive-compulsive disorder. But Tesla himself suggested that there were deeper reasons, that he had discovered something about the fundamental nature of these numbers. His statement about the 3, 6, and 9 referred to a pattern he discovered in the mathematics of doubling. If you start with 1 and double it repeatedly, you get 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. If you reduce each of these numbers to a single digit by summing their figures, you get 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. The pattern repeats indefinitely. 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. Notably, the numbers 3, 6, and 9 never appear in this doubling sequence. They form a separate set, an independent pattern. If you start with 3 and double it, 3, 6, 12, 24, 48, 96, reduced to a single digit, 3, 6, 3, 6, 3, 6. The pattern alternates between 3 and 6 indefinitely. And the 9 is even more extraordinary. If you take any number, multiply it by 9, and reduce the result to a single digit, you always get 9. 9 times 2 equals 18. 1 plus 8 equals 9. 9 times 3 equals 27. 2 plus 7 equals 9. This works with any number. The 9 is mathematically unique in this property. These numbers were not chosen arbitrarily by cultural preference. They were recognized by multiple traditions independently because they represent fundamental frequencies of cosmic organization. They are, using modern language, mathematical archetypes, patterns that naturally emerge in any sufficiently complex system. The 3 naturally emerges as the number of dynamic stability. 3 points define a plane. 3 legs make a table stable. Every synthesis requires the interaction of 2 principles that generate a third. 3 is the minimum number that transcends duality without losing dynamism. The 4 is the number of stable material manifestation. 4 points define a tetrahedron, the simplest solid. 4 directions establish orientation in 2-dimensional space. The square and the cube, forms with 4 sides and 6 faces respectively, represent terrestrial stability, solid structure. The 7 is particularly interesting. It appears in such diverse contexts that it suggests it represents something fundamental about how complex systems organize themselves. 7 notes before the octave that returns to the beginning. 7 visible colors in the rainbow. 7 planets known in antiquity. 7 days needed for the moon to pass from one phase to the next. The 7 appears to be the number of complete cycles, of processes that go through all necessary stages before starting again on a higher level. The 12, the product of 3 times 4, combines the qualities of both numbers, the creative dynamic of the 3 with the material stability of the 4. This is why it frequently appears in contexts involving complete cycles in material manifestation. 12 months of the year, 12 hours of the day. 12 zodiac signs representing 12 archetypes that the soul encounters on its journey through manifestation. Sacred structures, temples, cathedrals, mandalas, were designed incorporating these numbers not as symbolic decoration, but as vibrational technology. Initiated builders understood that specific proportions create specific effects on the consciousness of those who occupy those spaces. A temple built according to sacred proportions does not just represent spiritual truths, it vibrationally embodies them, creating a field of resonance that facilitates altered states of consciousness. Chapter 16. In the 21st century, we are witnessing a rediscovery of these ancient truths. Quantum physics has revealed that at a fundamental level, reality is vibration, frequency, wave rather than solid particle. String theory proposes that fundamental particles are vibrations of one-dimensional strings, exactly as Pythagoras intuited 2,500 years ago when he said that everything is number and vibration. Cymatics, the study of how sound creates patterns in matter, has visualized what the Pythagoreans taught, that specific frequencies organize matter into specific geometric shapes. When a plate covered in sand or liquid is vibrated at different frequencies, extraordinary geometric patterns emerge. Circles, squares, stars, complex mandalas. Each frequency produces its unique, reproducible, predictable pattern. This visually demonstrates that sound, which is vibration, which is frequency, which can be expressed mathematically, literally organizes matter. If we change the frequency, the shape changes. This validates the Pythagorean intuition that numbers, as representations of frequencies, are the primary organizers of physical reality. Researchers are beginning to explore therapeutic applications of specific frequencies. Frequencies that promote bone growth. Frequencies that destroy cancer cells without harming healthy tissue. Frequencies that induce deep states of meditation. Frequencies that facilitate the healing of psychological trauma. We are rediscovering what ancient healing temples knew. That sound, applied precisely according to knowledge of its mathematical properties, is powerful medicine. And on the fringes of science, researchers and healers are exploring something even more radical. The idea that numbers themselves, contemplated, repeated, meditated upon, can have healing effects. This leads us to the work of Grigory Grabovoi and others who have developed systems of specific numerical sequences supposedly capable of restoring health, correcting situations, and, according to some testimonies, even reversing diseases considered incurable. The journey that began with Pythagoras, which was lost in the fragmentation of modern knowledge, is returning. We are remembering that we live in a universe of vibration, that numbers are keys to those vibrations, and that by learning the language of numbers, by listening to their secret sounds, by consciously aligning ourselves with their frequencies, we can access capacities for transformation and healing that we are only beginning to comprehend. The symphony of the universe continues to play. The question is, are we ready to listen? Chapter 17. The number 1 is not simply the first number in a counting sequence. It is the principle of all manifestation, the source from which all other numbers emerge, the fundamental note upon which the entire symphony of the universe is built. In musical terms, the 1 is the bass tone, the root frequency from which all harmonics arise. In spiritual terms, the 1 is the primordial unity God, the absolute, the single consciousness that experiences itself as multiplicity. The vibration of the 1 is the simplest possible. It is the basic pulsation of existence versus non-existence, being versus non-being. Imagine the universe's most fundamental heartbeat, a pulse that says, I am, I am, I am, in eternal repetition. This is the 1. There is no complexity, no division, no relationship with anything else, because there is not yet anything else. There is only this primordial pulse of being. When we contemplate the 1 deeply, when we allow our consciousness to resonate with its frequency, we experience something extraordinary, a sense of complete unity, of indivisible totality. The boundaries we normally perceive between ourselves and the world become transparent. The sensation of being a separate entity temporarily dissolves, and there is direct recognition. I am the 1. The 1 is me. Everything is 1. Mystics of all traditions have described this experience. In Hinduism, it is called Advaita, non-duality. In Buddhism, Sunyata, emptiness that is simultaneously fullness. In Sufism, Tawheed, divine unity. In the Kabbalah, Ein Sof, the boundless infinite. Different names for the same experience, the frequency of the 1 experienced directly. The Pythagorean masters taught that meditating on the 1, repeating 1 as a mantra, visualizing the symbol of the 1, the point or the circle, had specific effects. It restored a sense of wholeness in people who felt fragmented. It healed the existential wound of separation. It generated deep peace because in the frequency of the 1, there can be no conflict. There is no duality to generate friction. In terms of physical healing, the vibration of the 1 relates to the unification of bodily systems that have fallen out of synchronization. When different organs and systems operate as separate entities without coordination, disease arises. Contemplation of the 1 can facilitate a return to systemic coherence, where the body remembers that it is a single organism, not a collection of disconnected parts. Chapter 18. From the 1 emerges the 2, and with this emergence, all manifestation begins. The 2 is the first division, the creation of polarity, the separation that makes relationship, movement, and change possible. Without the 2, the 1 would remain eternally immobile, with nothing to perceive except itself. The 2 is the mirror in which the 1 can see itself reflected. The vibration of the 2 is fundamentally rhythmic. It pulses between 2 poles: positive, negative, masculine, feminine, light, darkness, expansion, contraction, inhalation, exhalation. All manifestation requires this pulsation between opposites. It is the fundamental rhythm of the universe, the cosmic heartbeat. In music, the 2 is expressed in binary rhythm, the most basic time: beat rest, beat rest. This rhythm resonates deeply with humans because it replicates our fundamental biological rhythms: the heartbeat, breathing, the cycle of wakefulness and sleep. The 2 is the number of incarnated life, of existence in time. But the 2 also inherently contains tension. Polarity can be experienced as conflict, as a painful separation from the original unity. Much of human suffering arises from being trapped in one or the other pole of a duality: pleasure versus pain, success versus failure, love versus fear. We identify with one side and reject the other, creating internal war. The wisdom of the 2 consists of recognizing that the poles are complementary, not contradictory. They cannot exist without each other. Light defines darkness and vice versa. Pleasure is significant only in contrast to pain. The 2 teaches us the principle of complementarity, that totality requires both poles. Meditating on the 2, on its rhythm of alternation, can heal internal divisions. People who experience conflict between different aspects of themselves, who feel torn between contradictory desires, can find resolution by contemplating the nature of the 2. Not by eliminating one of the poles, but by recognizing that both are necessary, that life is the dance between them. Physically, the 2 governs all systems that operate in pairs or in alternation: the 2 cerebral hemispheres, the 2 lungs, the 2 kidneys, the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. When these systems lose their balance, when one dominates excessively over the other, disease arises. The vibration of the 2 restores balance, synchronizing rhythms that have fallen out of sync. Chapter 19. The 3 is where the magic truly begins. When 2 poles interact, they generate a third. This third is not simply the sum of the previous 2. It is something completely new, a synthesis that transcends both while containing them. The 3 is the number of creativity, of generation, of active manifestation. Throughout nature, the 3 appears as a creative principle. 3 elements are required to create: 2 progenitors and a child, thesis and antithesis, generating synthesis, electron and proton, generating a neutral atom. The Trinity, present in countless spiritual traditions, is not arbitrary theological doctrine, but a recognition of this fundamental principle. The vibration of the 3 is expansive, projective, manifestative. While the 1 is pure potential and the 2 is dynamic polarity, the 3 is actualization. It is the number of doing, of creating, of giving form to the formless. In music, ternary rhythm has a quality of forward movement, of progression, of unfolding narrative. The Pythagoreans considered the 3 to be the first true number. The 1 is indivisible unity. The 2 is the first division, but still lacks stability. It oscillates between poles. The 3 is the first number that creates stable form. 3 points define a triangle, the first closed geometric figure. 3 legs make a table stable, where 2 would not suffice. In terms of human consciousness, the 3 represents the synthesis of body and spirit into soul, or of conscious and unconscious into integrated ego. Many psychological systems recognize a triadic structure. Freud with the ID, ego, and superego. Jung with the persona, shadow, and self. This structure is not arbitrary. It reflects how the human psyche organizes itself according to the principle of the 3. Meditating on the 3 activates creative capacities. People who feel blocked, stuck, unable to generate or manifest can awaken their creativity by contemplating the 3. Artists, writers, inventors from various traditions have consciously used the vibration of the 3, starting projects on third hours, working in cycles of 3, invoking a specific creative trinity from their tradition. Physically, the 3 governs processes that require 3 components: the 3 layers of the heart, the 3 types of muscles, the 3 trimesters of pregnancy. It also governs transformation processes that pass through 3 stages: birth, life, death, past, present, future. The vibration of the 3 facilitates transitions, helps in processes of change and transformation. Chapter 20. The 4 is solidification, complete material manifestation. 4 directions, 4 elements, 4 seasons. It is the number of the earth, of the tangible, of what can be measured and touched. Its vibration is stabilizing, grounding. People who feel scattered, disconnected from the physical, can benefit from meditating on the 4. Physically, it governs support structures, the 4 limbs, the 4 chambers of the heart, the 4 types of basic tissues. The 5 is the number of organic life, 5 fingers on each extremity, 5 senses, pentagonal symmetry in many living forms like starfish. Its vibration is vitalizing, animating. It represents the spirit embodied in matter, the quintessence, the 5th element that animates the 4 material elements. Meditating on the 5 increases vitality, connects with life force. Physically, it governs systems that distribute life, the circulatory system with its 5 types of blood vessels. The 6 is balance and harmony. 2 times 3, the fusion of the spiritual and the material. Its geometric shape is the hexagon, present in beehives, in crystals, in structures of maximum efficiency. Its vibration is harmonizing, balancing. It is the number of beauty, of perfect proportion. Meditating on the 6 restores equilibrium in systems that have fallen into extremes. Physically, it governs homeostasis processes, the mechanisms that keep internal conditions constant. The 7 is the number of the sacred, of complete cycles. 7 chakras, 7 notes, 7 days, 7 traditional planets. Its vibration is completing, integrating. It represents the soul's complete journey through all necessary experiences before returning transformed. Meditating on the 7 facilitates completing cycles, closing chapters, achieving mastery. Physically, it governs systems of 7 components, the 7 major endocrine glands, the 7 main nerve plexuses. The 8 is infinity, renewal, regeneration. Its symbol is the spiral or the sideways infinity symbol. It represents cycles that are renewed, death followed by rebirth. Its vibration is regenerative, transformative. Meditating on the 8 helps in processes of recovery after loss, of renewal after exhaustion. Physically, it governs processes of cell regeneration, wound healing, tissue renewal. The 9 is completeness, the end before the return to the 1 on a higher level. 3 times 3, the complete manifestation of the Trinity. Its vibration is culminating, transcendent. It represents wisdom achieved, a completed cycle lived. Meditating on the 9 facilitates letting go of the old to make way for the new. Physically, it governs processes of elimination, purification, and the completion of biological cycles like the 9 months of gestation. Chapter 21. The 0 is the most mysterious of all numbers. Mathematically, it is absence, nothing, void. But spiritually, it is infinite potential, the matrix from which everything emerges and to which everything returns. It is the silence before and after all music, the space between notes that gives shape and meaning to sound. The vibration of the 0 is not vibration in the ordinary sense. It is the absolute stillness that contains all possible vibrations in a latent state. It is like the white screen upon which all images appear, or the empty canvas upon which all paintings are created. Without the 0, the other numbers would have no context. There would be no space for their manifestation. Meditating on the 0 is meditating on the void, on the nothingness that is simultaneously everything. It is the most advanced and the simplest practice. It requires letting go of all form, all definition, all mental content. And in that complete letting go, there is access to the very source of existence, to the pure potential from which all forms emerge. In terms of healing, the 0 represents the return to the original state, before illness, before trauma, before identification with limiting patterns. It is the complete reset, the blank page, the absolute new beginning. Some traditions teach that the deepest healing occurs when we take our consciousness to zero, to the void, and from there allow a new configuration of health to emerge spontaneously without mentally imposing what it should be like. Chapter 22. Numbers do not exist only as abstract concepts or only as vibratory frequencies. They are also expressed as specific geometric shapes. There is a direct and precise correspondence between number, mathematical proportion, and form in space. This is the essence of sacred geometry, the recognition that certain geometric shapes embody sacred numbers and therefore carry their vibratory frequencies. The one is expressed geometrically as the point or the circle. The point is location without extension, pure presence without form. The circle is equal expansion in all directions from a single center, a perfect symbol of unity, totality, infinity without beginning or end. The two is expressed as the line, which connects 2 points, or as the vesica piscis, the shape created by the intersection of 2 circles. The vesica piscis is an ancient symbol of the intersection of heaven and earth, spirit and matter, and appears in sacred art across multiple cultures. The 3 is expressed as the triangle. The equilateral triangle, with 3 equal sides and 3 equal angles, is a symbol of perfect balance of the Trinity manifested in form. It points upward, symbolizing spiritual ascent, or downward, symbolizing the descent of spirit into matter. The 4 is expressed as the square and the cube. The square, with its 4 equal sides and 4 right angles, represents stability, foundation, the terrestrial. The cube, the 3-dimensional form of the square, is a symbol of solid matter, of complete physical manifestation. The 5 is expressed as the pentagon and the 5-pointed star. The pentagon inherently contains the golden ratio and appears in living forms. The 5-pointed star, the pentagram, has been a symbol of the human being with arms and legs extended, a microcosm of the universe. The 6 is expressed as the hexagon, the shape of maximum efficiency in packing 2-dimensional space. Bees build hexagonal cells not by conscious intelligence, but because the geometry of the 6 is optimal for storing maximum volume with minimum material. Ice crystals form snowflakes with 6-fold symmetry. The 7 has no simple 2-dimensional geometric shape, but is expressed in heptagrams and complex 3-dimensional structures. Its absence of simple form is significant. The 7 represents what transcends purely material manifestation, what points toward higher dimensions. Chapter 23. Among all mathematical proportions, one stands out for its ubiquity in nature and its aesthetic impact: the golden ratio, represented by the Greek letter phi, approximately 1.618. This proportion appears when we divide a line in such a way that the ratio of the larger part to the smaller part is equal to the ratio of the whole to the larger part. The extraordinary thing about phi is that it appears spontaneously in countless natural contexts. The proportions of the human body are saturated with phi, the relationship between total height and navel height, between arm length and forearm length, between finger segments. The human face considered most beautiful is the one whose proportions are closest to phi. Plants grow according to phi. Leaves emerge from stems at angles based on phi to maximize sun exposure. Flowers arrange their petals according to the Fibonacci sequence, which converges toward phi. The spirals of seashells, galaxies, and hurricanes all follow the golden ratio. The Pythagoreans revered phi as a symbol of the divine proportion, the mathematical signature of the universe's creative intelligence. It is not an arbitrary number, but an expression of a principle of optimal growth, of perfect balance between too much and too little, of the proportion that allows infinite harmonic expansion. When we consciously apply the golden ratio in design, architecture, music, and art, we are literally incorporating this sacred frequency into our creations. Ancient temples, Gothic cathedrals, and the great works of Renaissance art were all consciously built or composed according to phi. They don't just look beautiful to the eye. They resonate harmonically with the inherent proportions of our own body structure and with the fundamental patterns of the cosmos. In terms of vibratory healing, the contemplation of phi-based shapes has an ordering effect on the nervous system. Studies have shown that observing golden spirals, golden rectangles, and other shapes based on this proportion produces states of relaxation and cerebral coherence. It is as if the brain, by recognizing these patterns that reflect its own organizational structure, enters into harmonic resonance. The architects of ancient healing spaces incorporated phi into the dimensions of their temples precisely to create environments that would facilitate physical and spiritual restoration. The proportions of the space itself acted as medicine, tuning those who entered to frequencies of optimal harmony. Phi is, in a very real sense, sound frozen into form. If we could vibrate a structure built according to golden proportions and translate those vibrations into audible frequencies, we would hear perfect musical harmonies. Form and sound are different manifestations of the same underlying mathematical principle. Chapter 24. There are only 5 three-dimensional shapes where all faces are identical regular polygons and the same number of faces meet at each vertex. These are the Platonic solids, the tetrahedron with 4 triangular faces, the cube with 6 square faces, the octahedron with 8 triangular faces. Faces, the dodecahedron with 12 pentagonal faces, and the icosahedron with 20 triangular faces. Plato, deeply influenced by Pythagoreanism, taught that these 5 solids were the fundamental shapes of the universe. The tetrahedron represented fire, the cube earth, the octahedron air, the icosahedron water, and the dodecahedron the ether, or the totality of the cosmos. This was not an arbitrary classification, but a recognition that certain geometric proportions correspond to specific states of matter. Modern physics has validated aspects of this ancient intuition. Crystals form in structures that reflect the Platonic solids. Salt forms cubes. Certain minerals form octahedrons. At the molecular level, complex structures are built from geometric arrangements that include these fundamental patterns. More profoundly, the Platonic solids represent the only ways that perfect symmetry can manifest in three-dimensional space. They are, literally, the archetypal forms, the primary patterns according to which all complex structures are organized. They are to form what the numbers 1 through 10 are to quantity, the fundamental principles from which everything else is derived. In esoteric traditions, meditating on the Platonic solids is used to access different states of consciousness and to work with different aspects of reality. Visualizing the tetrahedron activates energy, will, and transformation. The cube anchors, stabilizes, and connects with the material. The octahedron balances and integrates polarities. The icosahedron fluidifies, allowing adaptability and emotional flow. The dodecahedron expands consciousness toward higher dimensions. Some healers work with crystals cut into the shapes of the Platonic solids, using their geometric fields to influence the body's energy field. Others use visualization, imagining these shapes spinning in specific chakras or surrounding the entire body. The theory is that these perfect forms, when contemplated or energetically projected, act as templates that guide chaotic systems toward more ordered configurations. Chapter 25. In the 60s, the Swiss scientist Hans Jenny developed what he called cymatics, the study of how sound vibrations create patterns in matter. Using metal plates covered with sand, liquid, or powder, and vibrating them at different frequencies, Jenny photographed the extraordinary geometric patterns that emerged. What he discovered was astonishing. Each frequency produced a unique, perfectly reproducible pattern. Low frequencies produced simple patterns, circles, waves. Higher frequencies produced patterns of increasing complexity. Stars, mandalas, shapes that looked organic, almost alive. And most notably, many of these patterns resembled forms found in nature. When Jenny applied frequencies corresponding to human vowels pronounced in Sanskrit, the patterns that emerged were surprisingly similar to yantras, the sacred geometric diagrams used in Hindu meditation. This suggested that the ancient creators of these sacred symbols had intuitively grasped the shapes that sacred sounds produce. They had somehow seen the vibratory patterns of the mantras they chanted. Cymatics provides direct visual evidence of something the Pythagoreans taught millennia ago. That sound organizes matter, that vibration creates form, that there is a direct correspondence between frequency and geometry. It is not a metaphor to say that the universe is music frozen into form. It is a literal description of how vibration structures material reality. For healing, this has profound implications. If our bodies are matter, and if sound organizes matter into specific patterns, then the correct sound, the appropriate frequency, can literally reorganize tissues that have fallen into patterns of disharmony. Disease can be seen as body matter vibrating at the wrong frequency, organized in a dysfunctional pattern. Healing through sound restores the correct frequency, allowing matter to reorganize into its optimal pattern. Chapter 26. Leonardo da Vinci, influenced by the study of the Roman architect Vitruvius, created his famous drawing of the Vitruvian Man, a human figure with arms and legs extended, simultaneously inscribed in a circle and in a square. This drawing was not an arbitrary artistic exercise. It was a demonstration that the human body embodies the fundamental geometric proportions of the universe. The human body is saturated with proportions based on phi, the golden ratio. The distance from the navel to the feet divided by the total body height approximates phi. The length of the forearm divided by the length of the hand approximates phi. The segments of the fingers maintain golden proportions relative to each other. The face can be divided into multiple golden rectangles. But beyond phi, the body expresses other sacred numbers. We have 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, expressing fundamental duality. We have 5 fingers on each extremity, expressing the number of life. Our spine has 33 vertebrae, a composite number that reduces to 6, the number of balance. 7 main chakras according to Eastern traditions, 7 major endocrine glands according to Western medicine, expressing the number of cyclical completeness. Body rhythms also express significant numbers. The heart beats approximately 72 times per minute at rest, a number that is a multiple of 9 and has significance in multiple numerological traditions. Breathing in a relaxed state occurs approximately 18 times per minute, a number that reduces to 9. Hormonal cycles, cellular regeneration cycles, and circadian rhythms all express mathematical proportions that connect the human microcosm with the universal macrocosm. This correspondence between the human body and the sacred proportions of the universe is not an evolutionary accident. From a Pythagorean perspective, it is evidence that we are literally embodied music, mathematics made flesh, the symphony of the cosmos condensed into human form. Understanding this transforms our relationship with our own bodies. We are not arbitrarily assembled biological machines. We are living temples built according to the same architectural blueprint that governs galaxies and atoms. Chapter 27. In the late 20th century, a Russian mathematician and healer named Grigory Grabovoi developed a controversial but fascinating system based on the idea that specific numerical sequences can restore health, correct situations, and, according to his most extreme claims, even reverse processes considered irreversible like death. Grabovoi claimed to have developed clairvoyance that allowed him to perceive the informational structure of reality. According to his view, every disease, every organ, every situation has a specific vibratory frequency that can be expressed numerically. When an organ is ill, it is vibrating at the wrong frequency. By concentrating on the correct numerical sequence, which represents the frequency of that organ's optimal health, one can literally reprogram the organ, restoring it to its original state of harmony. For example, Grabovoi assigned the sequence 5, 8, Sanda 1, 4, 2, 1, 8 for general normalization of the organism. For the liver specifically, the sequence was 5, 7, 8, 1, 5, 4, 3. For heart problems, 1, 8, E, 4, 3, 2, 1, 4. He developed sequences for hundreds of specific conditions, each supposedly calibrated precisely to the vibratory frequency that would restore optimal health. The method of use was simple. Write the sequence, visualize it, repeat it mentally or verbally, concentrating on it with the intention of restoring harmony. Some practitioners wrote the sequences on the body over specific organs. Others repeated them as mantras. Others visualized them as spheres of golden light containing the numbers. Chapter 28. Grabovoi's work has generated intense controversy. His most extreme claims, particularly about the resurrection of deceased people, led to accusations of fraud and eventually imprisonment in Russia. Critics dismiss him as a charlatan exploiting the suffering of desperate people with impossible promises. However, there are aspects of his system that deserve serious consideration. First, the core idea that numbers represent frequencies and that focusing on specific frequencies can produce measurable effects is not absurd. It is consistent with established principles of resonance and with the Pythagorean view of the universe as fundamentally mathematical. Second, thousands of people report positive experiences using Grabovoi's sequences. Some report dramatic physical improvements. Others report changes in life situations. Although testimonials do not constitute scientific proof, the volume of positive reports suggests that something is occurring, although perhaps not exactly what Grabovoi claimed. One possibility is that the sequences function primarily as meditative focus tools. The act of concentrating intensely on a numerical sequence with the clear intention of healing can produce states of cerebral and cardiac coherence similar to deep meditation. And as we have seen, these states have measurable effects on physical health. Another more radical possibility is that there is something genuine in the idea that specific numbers resonate with specific biological structures. Molecular biology has revealed that cellular processes are governed by specific frequencies. DNA emits photons at specific frequencies. Cell membranes vibrate at characteristic frequencies. Perhaps certain numbers, when contemplated with sufficient intensity, really can influence these biological frequencies through mechanisms we are only beginning to understand. Chapter 29. Regardless of whether Grabovoi's specific sequences have inherent power, the act of working with them constitutes a powerful meditative practice. It requires sustained concentration, clear intention, and rhythmic repetition, all elements that induce altered states of consciousness known to have healing effects. When we repeat a numerical sequence, 81542, 81542, over and over, the ordinary mind gradually quiets down. Discursive thoughts decrease. We enter a state of focused presence. This state is therapeutic in itself, independent of any special power of the specific numbers. Furthermore, the act of assigning numbers to a health condition transforms our relationship with that condition. Instead of identifying with the disease, of feeling victimized by it, we take an active role. We are doing something, applying a technology, even if that technology is primarily mental. This sense of agency, of personal power, has well-documented therapeutic effects. The visualization of numbers also activates the left cerebral hemisphere, the analytical, logical, sequential part. For people who tend to get trapped in overwhelming emotions or chaotic circular thinking, focusing on numerical sequences can be a way to rebalance brain activity, to bring mental order where there was chaos. Chapter 30. Numbers are not only expressed in space as geometric form, they are also expressed in time as rhythm and cycle. And it is in the domain of time where numbers perhaps exert their deepest influence on health and well-being. Everything in the universe is cyclical. Planets orbit in precise cycles. Seasons follow an annual cycle. The moon waxes and wanes in a monthly cycle. The sun rises and sets in a daily cycle. And our bodies, as part of the universe, also operate according to multiple cycles nested within each other. The 24-hour circadian cycle governs practically all physiological functions. Body temperature rises and falls according to this cycle. Hormones are secreted at specific times of day. Cell division occurs primarily during nighttime sleep. When this cycle is deregulated, for example through night work or chronic jet lag, health deteriorates dramatically. The female menstrual cycle of approximately 28 days synchronizes with the lunar cycle. This is not folklore, but biological fact. Human fertility is governed by cycles that reflect celestial cycles. When women live away from artificial light in natural environments, their cycles synchronize with each other and with the moon. Longer cycles also affect health. Seasonal cycles of 7 to 10 years in solar activity influence rates of cardiovascular disease. Cycles of approximately 11 years correlate with patterns of epidemics. We are immersed in a network of temporal cycles that continuously influence us. Chapter 31. Circadian rhythms exhibit fascinating numerical proportions. The 24-hour cycle naturally divides into periods that reflect sacred numbers. 12 hours of light predominance, 12 of darkness at the equinox, 3 periods of 8 hours, 4 periods of 6 hours, 6 periods of 4 hours, 8 periods of 3 hours. Each division has significance. Spiritual traditions that divide the day into periods of prayer or meditation invariably use these numbers. Muslims pray 5 times a day at astronomically determined times. Christian monks chanted offices every 3 hours. Yogis divide the day into muhurtas of 48 minutes, 30 muhurtas per day. These are not arbitrary numbers, but a recognition that there are optimal times for different activities according to the body's natural rhythms. There are hours when digestion is optimal, others when mental concentration is maximum, others when the body is prepared for intense physical exercise, others when deep sleep is most accessible. Traditional Chinese medicine developed an elaborate system of 2-hour temporal cycles where different energy meridians and their associated organs are at their point of maximum or minimum activity. The liver meridian is most active between 1 and 3 in the morning, the heart meridian between 11 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. Treating organs during their hours of maximum energy supposedly maximizes therapeutic effectiveness. Chapter 32. Spiritual traditions worldwide use specific numerical repetitions in their practices. Catholics pray the Rosary, 53 Hail Marys, plus 5 Our Fathers, numbers with specific significance. Buddhists repeat mantras 108 times, a sacred number in multiple Eastern traditions. Muslims use 99 beads, representing the 99 names of Allah. These repetitions are not primitive superstition. They are consciousness transformation technology based on the understanding that repetitive rhythm, especially in specific numbers, induces altered states that facilitate deep changes in the nervous system. Rhythmic repetition has measurable effects on brain waves. After certain repetitions, the brain begins to synchronize with the rhythm. The discursive mind quiets down. There is access to states of consciousness ordinarily inaccessible. In these states, therapeutic suggestion, healing visualization, and focused intention have amplified power. The specific number of repetitions also matters. 108 has unique mathematical properties. It is a multiple of 9, 3, and 4. It reduces to 9, the number of completeness. In Eastern traditions, it is said that there are 108 energy lines converging at the heart chakra. Repeating a mantra 108 times supposedly activates all these lines, creating a complete field of coherence. Chapter 33. When bodily systems fall into disease, they are frequently out of sync. Heart rhythm becomes erratic. Breathing loses its natural regularity. Brain waves show chaotic patterns. hormonal cycles become deregulated. It's like an orchestra where each musician plays at a different tempo. Conscious external rhythm can act as the orchestra conductor, helping desynchronized systems find coherence again. When we consciously practice rhythmic breathing, for example 6 breaths per minute, a number that maximizes cardiac coherence, the nervous system gradually synchronizes with this rhythm. The chaos is ordered. Music with a strong constant rhythm has a similar effect. Patients with Parkinson's disease, whose motor system is deregulated, can walk more normally when listening to music with a constant rhythm. The external rhythm provides a temporal structure that the damaged nervous system can follow. Shamans of multiple cultures use drums at specific frequencies, typically 4 to 7 beats per second, to induce trance states. This frequency corresponds to theta brain waves, associated with deep states of meditation and access to unconscious material. The rhythmic drumming entrains the brain to these frequencies. Chapter 34. Becoming a tuned instrument is not a passive process of receiving information, but an active practice of transformation. It requires discipline, patience, and a willingness to experiment directly with numerical frequencies instead of just conceptualizing them. The first step is to develop sensitivity to numbers. Start noticing numerical patterns in daily life. Which numbers appear repeatedly? Which numbers produce emotional resonance? Not from superstition or the search for magical signs, but as a practice of conscious attention to the mathematical structures that permeate existence. The second step is deep contemplation of individual numbers. Take a number, say 5, and spend time meditating on it. Visualize the symbol, repeat the word. Look for manifestations of the 5 in nature and culture. Eventually, something in consciousness begins to resonate with the essential quality of the 5. It is not intellectual understanding, but direct, experiential recognition. The third step is working with geometric proportions. Draw platonic solids. Construct golden spirals. Observe these forms in meditation. Allow their mathematical perfection to speak directly to deep levels of the psyche that transcend verbal thought. The fourth step is practical application. Consciously using numerical sequences for healing, using specific rhythms in meditative practice, aligning activities with natural temporal cycles. Experiment and observe effects with an open mind, but critical discernment. Chapter 35. The Pythagorean masters viewed their teaching not only as knowledge to preserve, but as a seed to plant for the future of humanity. They foresaw a time when all humanity would awaken to its nature as embodied music, when every person would be conscious of the mathematical symphony that sustains them. In that future, education would begin by teaching children to listen to the secret sound of numbers. Not rote memorization of multiplication tables, but direct experience of the vibratory qualities of each number. Children would grow up knowing they are instruments in the cosmic orchestra, that their health depends on staying in tune. Medicine would fully integrate the understanding that we are vibratory beings. Diagnosis would include assessing frequencies, detecting where systems have fallen into dissonance. Treatment would include restoring optimal frequencies through sound, rhythm, contemplation of sacred proportions, in addition to physical interventions when necessary. Architecture would be sacred again, consciously designed according to proportions that facilitate health and the elevation of consciousness. Healing spaces would be temples of perfect geometry, where merely entering would be therapeutic. Music would be understood as powerful medicine, composed and applied according to precise knowledge of how different frequencies, rhythms, and proportions affect the body and consciousness. We would have symphonies to heal hearts, songs to calm agitated minds, rhythms to energize fatigued bodies. And every person would cultivate their own tuning practice, dedicating regular time to aligning with the fundamental frequencies of the cosmos, to remembering their nature as a temporal expression of the eternal symphony. Suffering would not completely disappear. It is part of the human experience, but it would be dramatically reduced When we recover this forgotten knowledge, that we are singing numbers, dancing geometry, mathematics conscious of itself, and by remembering it, by consciously aligning with this truth, we find healing, peace, and the profound sense of belonging that comes from knowing we are perfectly tuned notes in the infinite music of the universe.